In the brutal winter of 1761, when snow blanketed the rooftops of Madrid and icy winds cut through the cobblestone streets like daggers, a child was born who would challenge everything Spanish society believed about human worth and dignity. Her name was Eugenia Martinez, and from her first breath she was marked as different. The birth took place in a humble home in Lavapiés, one of Madrid's poorest neighborhoods. Antonio Martinez, a struggling shoemaker, ran desperately through the narrow streets searching for Doña Remedios, the local midwife. His wife Isabel was in premature labor, and terror gripped his heart as her screams echoed through their small dwelling. When Doña Remedios finally arrived, what she witnessed in that dimly lit room would haunt her forever. After hours of agonizing labor, a weak cry filled the air, but the experienced midwife's face transformed into a mask of horror. The newborn girl bore severe physical deformities, a twisted spine creating a pronounced hump, underdeveloped legs, and asymmetrical facial features that immediately marked her as what society would cruelly label a monster. Despite the midwife's shock and Antonio's paralyzing fear, Isabel extended her arms with fierce maternal love. She cradled her daughter tenderly, naming her Eugenia after her own mother, refusing to see anything but her precious child in those tiny, struggling limbs. Word of the monstrous birth spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Superstitious neighbors began avoiding the Martinez family, whispering that the child's deformities were divine punishment for hidden sins. The family found themselves increasingly isolated, with little Eugenia hidden away from the cruel stares and taunts of the outside world. For 8 years, Eugenia lived protected within the walls of her modest home, rarely venturing outside. Her parents, despite their poverty, showered her with love and dignity, creating a small sanctuary where she could exist without judgment. But their humble life was about to be shattered by forces far beyond their control. King Charles III maintained an extensive collection of rare objects and specimens in the royal palace, including human curiosities that he considered worthy of scientific study. When news of the deformed girl from Lavapiés reached the Count of Floridablanca, the king's minister, he saw an opportunity to add something extraordinary to the royal collection. On a spring afternoon in 1769, a magnificent royal carriage pulled up outside the Martinez home, causing immediate commotion in the impoverished neighborhood. The Count himself descended, accompanied by 2 royal guards, his presence both magnificent and terrifying to the humble shoemaker who answered the door. The Count's words were delivered with cold authority. The king desired to meet the special child, and it was not a request, but a royal command. Isabel instinctively moved to protect her daughter, declaring that Eugenia was not an object for exhibition, but a creature of God. However, when the Count offered a monthly pension in exchange for Eugenia's presence at court, promising she would be treated with dignity and could receive education beyond what her parents could provide, the desperate couple faced an impossible choice. That night, after a heart-wrenching farewell, 8-year-old Eugenia was taken to the royal palace. The child, who had never left her neighborhood, found herself surrounded by golden ceilings, luxurious furnishings, and an opulence that overwhelmed her senses. She was given a small room adjacent to the ladies' quarters, far superior to her humble birthplace, but still marking her status as something less than human. The following morning brought Eugenia's presentation to King Charles III. Dressed in new clothes provided by the court, she struggled to walk due to her physical limitations, her weak legs barely supporting her twisted frame. The king observed her with the clinical curiosity of a scientist examining a rare specimen, while courtiers whispered, laughed, and struggled to hide their revulsion. The king's words cemented Eugenia's fate. She was welcomed not as a person, but as a rarity of nature, destined to become part of his collection of curiosities. Thus began her life as what the court cruelly dubbed the monster of the court, a name that would follow her for years to come. The initial months were extraordinarily difficult. Though she had guaranteed food and shelter, Eugenia became a constant object of observation, study, and mockery. Royal physicians examined her anatomy, while court artists sketched her deformities for archival purposes. She was posed in various positions, treated not as a child, but as a fascinating specimen of human abnormality. However, in this dehumanizing environment, Eugenia found an unexpected ally in Dr. Francisco Martinez, the royal physician. Unlike his colleagues, Dr. Martinez saw beyond Eugenia's physical differences, recognizing the sharp intelligence hidden beneath her suffering. He began treating her with respect and kindness, engaging her in conversations that revealed her remarkable mental capacity. Through Dr. Martinez's intervention, Eugenia gained access to the royal library, an extraordinary privilege for someone of her condition and origin. The girl, who had never received formal education, discovered the magnificent world of books, becoming a voracious reader who consumed works on history, literature, and even medical treatises that the good doctor strategically left within her reach. One afternoon, while studying an anatomy book, Eugenia was discovered by Princess Maria Luisa, the king's daughter. The princess, initially surprised to find the monster reading, became intrigued when Eugenia demonstrated her ability to understand complex medical texts, explaining how her own spinal deformity affected her bone structure with surprising clarity. This encounter marked a turning point in Eugenia's life. Princess Maria Luisa, driven by curiosity and boredom with court life, began requesting Eugenia's presence not as a curiosity, but as a conversation companion. Eugenia evolved from simple court monster to something unprecedented, the learned monster, gaining a measure of protection through the princess's favor. However, not everyone approved of this unusual relationship. The Count of Aranda, a cruel and influential nobleman, viewed Eugenia's growing influence over the princess with suspicion and disgust, considering it beneath royal dignity to associate with such a creature. During monthly visits with her parents, Eugenia's transformation became evident. Though better fed and clothed than ever before, emotional scars marked her young face. When her mother asked if she was happy, Eugenia's response revealed the complexity of her situation. She had learned to find small joys in books, knowledge, and kind conversations, but never forgot that to most people, she remained merely a curiosity. As adolescence approached, Eugenia developed into a remarkably complex individual. Shy and reserved due to constant rejection, she simultaneously possessed an intelligence that surpassed many educated nobles. Her unusual position as the court's learned monster provided some protection while generating envy and resentment among those who found her elevation unnatural. The year 1779 brought significant changes when Princess Maria Luisa married and departed for Italy. Before leaving, the princess had a final meeting with Eugenia, expressing genuine affection for her strange friend and presenting her with a small chest of jewels, suggesting that someday they might help Eugenia find freedom. With her primary protector gone, and King Charles growing increasingly disinterested in his collection of curiosities, 18-year-old Eugenia found her situation becoming precarious. It was then that Dr. Martinez proposed a daring plan. He had received an invitation to participate in a medical congress in Barcelona and could take Eugenia as his assistant, offering her a chance to escape her gilded cage. After sleepless nights of consideration, weighing the risks of venturing into a world that might prove as cruel as the court, Eugenia made her choice. On an autumn dawn in 1780, she silently abandoned the royal palace, carrying only the princess's jewels, some books, and hope for a different future. Barcelona represented a fresh beginning for Eugenia, though not without challenges. Dr. Martinez installed her in a small house near the port with Doña Carmen, a trusted housekeeper who had lost her only son, and welcomed Eugenia with initial curiosity that evolved into genuine affection. The initial months saw Eugenia rarely leaving the house, fear of facing familiar reactions keeping her secluded. She spent her days organizing Dr. Martinez's medical documents, transcribing his notes, and continuing her self-education. However, Barcelona proved different from Madrid, with Dr. Martinez's circle consisting primarily of scientists, physicians, and intellectuals who, while initially surprised by Eugenia's appearance, could see beyond her physical differences. Gradually, Eugenia began participating in scientific gatherings held at the house. Though her presence initially caused discomfort when she spoke, her intelligence and knowledge impressed those present. Her sharp wit and intellectual capacity began earning respect rather than mere curiosity. Dr. Martinez had begun working on a treatise about congenital deformities, with Eugenia not only assisting in its writing, but contributing her own experience and perspective. When he suggested she should appear as co-author, Eugenia's disbelief revealed her continued struggle with self-worth, but they eventually agreed she would be acknowledged in the dedication, a small but significant recognition of her intellectual contribution. As months passed, Eugenia ventured outside more frequently. Though her appearance still attracted stares and comments, Barcelona's urban density and cosmopolitan character meant reactions were less extreme than in Madrid. When a group of children began following and mocking her during a walk, Eugenia surprised everyone by stopping to educate them about her condition, explaining that she was simply born different and could think and feel just like them. This incident sparked a transformation in Eugenia's approach. She realized she could use her experience to educate and change perceptions, becoming an active agent in transforming society's view of physical difference. She proposed organizing educational talks for medical students and interested public, where she would explain her condition from both medical and human perspectives. The success of these talks was modest but significant, with several medical students reporting how the experience transformed their perception of physical deformities and doctor-patient relationships. When the Barcelona Medical Society invited Dr. Martinez to present his treatise, suggesting his assistant could accompany him, Eugenia faced one of her greatest challenges. Standing before a room filled with physicians, scientists, and ladies interested in scientific matters, Eugenia introduced herself not as the court monster, but as a collaborator in medical research. Her presentation, lasting an hour, addressed not only medical aspects of her condition, but social and psychological implications of living with visible deformity in a society obsessed with physical normalcy. The resulting applause was not compassionate or condescending, but genuine intellectual respect. Among the attendees, Dr. Miguel de Foronda from Aragon was so impressed that he invited Eugenia to visit the hospital of Our Lady of Grace in Zaragoza, where her perspective could prove invaluable for treating children with similar conditions. This invitation marked the beginning of a new phase in Eugenia's life. With Dr. Martinez's support, she began visiting different hospitals and medical centers throughout Catalonia and Aragon, collaborating in developing more humane and effective treatments for children with congenital deformities. Her reputation grew not as a curiosity, but as an expert combining medical knowledge with lived experience. In 1784, Eugenia received news that would again alter her life's course. A letter from Madrid informing her of her father's death. Her mother, Isabel, now alone, and despite the continuing royal pension, lived in loneliness and emptiness without Antonio and her daughter. After consulting with Dr. Martinez, Eugenia decided to travel to Madrid to bring her mother to Barcelona. It was a risky journey. Though 5 years had passed since her escape, the possibility of being recognized and returned to court remained real. Dr. Martinez offered to accompany her, his presence as a retired royal physician potentially providing protection. The journey to Madrid was organized with discretion, Eugenia remaining hidden under veils and cloaks, avoiding crowded inns and public places. The Madrid they found had changed little. The same narrow streets, the same bustle, the same prejudices. The weight of memories suffocated Eugenia as they approached Lavapiés. Her childhood home appeared smaller and more decrepit than she remembered. Isabel, now a woman aged prematurely by hard work and hardship, could barely believe that the educated, confident woman before her was the same deformed child torn from her arms years earlier. During their stay, while preparing to return to Barcelona, Eugenia ventured to visit places from her childhood, always accompanied by Dr. Martinez and maintaining a low profile. One afternoon, while walking near the royal palace, she paused to contemplate the imposing facade that had been her prison for so many years. When Dr. Martinez asked if she wanted to enter, Eugenia declined the palace, but requested to visit the church of San Geronimo, where she had often prayed, seeking comfort. The church was nearly empty when they entered, and Eugenia slowly advanced through the central nave, remembering hours spent there, finding in faith the only refuge available to a marginalized child in court opulence. As they prepared to leave, they encountered a group of nobles entering. Among them, Eugenia recognized the Count of Aranda, one of the courtiers who had treated her most cruelly. The Count, now an aged but still powerful man, looked at her without initially recognizing her. Then a flash of recognition crossed his face. When he murmured loud enough for her to hear, "The court monster," Eugenia turned with dignity that impressed even her protector, and responded that her name was Eugenia Martinez, and she had long ceased being a monster to become a woman. The Count, disconcerted by this unexpected response, observed her carefully, perhaps recognizing the truth in her words about true monstrosity, residing not in bodily deformity, but in soul deformity. The following day, Eugenia, her mother, and Dr. Martinez departed for Barcelona. The return journey was more peaceful, as if Eugenia had left behind not only Madrid, but also the last vestiges of the monster she had once been. By 1790, a decade after fleeing the Madrid court, 29-year-old Eugenia had become a respected figure in certain medical and intellectual circles of Barcelona. Her collaboration with Dr. Martinez had produced treatises, articles, and most importantly for her, tangible improvements in treating children with deformities. Isabel had found peace in her final years, living with Eugenia and Doña Carmen. Though initially difficult to adapt to Barcelona life, far from Madrid and her husband's grave, she gradually built a new life, helping in the house and occasionally accompanying Eugenia on hospital visits. The house near the port had transformed over time, becoming not only Eugenia's residence, but also a meeting place for scientists, physicians, and increasingly parents of children with deformities seeking advice and hope. One spring morning, while Eugenia worked at her desk reviewing correspondence, Doña Carmen announced an unexpected visitor from Madrid, Teresa Valverde, former lady-in-waiting to Princess Maria Luisa. Teresa brought news that Maria Luisa was now queen, her husband, Charles IV, having ascended the throne after Charles III's death in 1788. More significantly, Teresa carried a request from the Queen for Eugenia to return to Madrid to establish a similar program at the General Hospital. The Queen had a personal motivation. Her youngest son, Prince Francisco, had been born with difficulties, suffering from leg weakness and facial asymmetry. Court physicians recommended treatments the Queen considered excessively cruel. After considering the proposal overnight and consulting with Dr. Martinez and her mother, Eugenia accepted the invitation, but with strict conditions: freedom to develop her program according to her methods, independent lodging outside the palace, guarantees she would not be exhibited as a curiosity, and that Dr. Martinez and her mother would accompany her. 2 weeks later, Eugenia received written confirmation with the royal seal accepting all her demands, plus a personal note from Maria Luisa expressing how the years had changed them both and requesting help to build a more humane future for those born different. The return to Madrid was organized with discretion. The capital had changed since her departure. Charles IV's reign had brought new constructions, increased commerce, and certain openness to enlightened ideas from France, though also political tensions due to the French Revolution. Following her conditions, Eugenia and her small family were installed in a comfortable house near the General Hospital, not in the palace. Her first meeting with Queen Maria Luisa occurred in a private setting, away from court. The Queen, dressed simply for the occasion, showed signs of tension, her face marked by worries rather than the radiant caprice Eugenia remembered. When the Queen observed that Eugenia had changed, showing a serenity she hadn't possessed before, Eugenia responded that freedom had that effect, even the limited freedom she had been able to enjoy. The Queen acknowledged her past insensitivity and youth, while Eugenia, demonstrating her growth, focused on the future rather than past grievances. Maria Luisa then introduced Eugenia to Prince Francisco, a 5-year-old child whose deformity, while not as severe as Eugenia's, was evident in his walking and facial asymmetry. Eugenia knelt before the child, telling him that she too was different and had learned that being different wasn't bad, though sometimes difficult because not everyone understood. During the following weeks, Eugenia worked closely with General Hospital physicians, establishing a program for children with deformities that combined physical treatments to improve mobility and well-being with psychological components, helping children and families accept and manage difference. Simultaneously, she visited Prince Francisco 3 times weekly, applying not only exercises and treatments to improve his physical condition, but sharing stories, readings, and conversations that strengthened his self-esteem. She explained to the Queen that while the prince's body would improve with treatments, his spirit needed more attention, as a strong spirit could support a weak body, but not vice versa. As Eugenia's work began showing results, her reputation grew from court monster to healer of the deformed. Noble families with children presenting various anomalies began requesting her services, though this new recognition also brought complications from traditional physicians who viewed her influence with suspicion. The tension between traditional medicine and Eugenia's more holistic approach became a topic of debate in Madrid medical circles. When Dr. Martinez suffered a stroke and subsequently died, Eugenia lost not only her protector and mentor, but the father figure who had filled the void left by Antonio. Dr. Martinez's funeral was simple but well attended, with Queen Maria Luisa herself attending, an unusual honor for someone not belonging to nobility. The Queen's presence demonstrated the respect Eugenia had earned and the recognition of Dr. Martinez's contributions to medical advancement and human dignity. Now truly alone with the responsibility of continuing their shared work, Eugenia faced increasing political agitation as news from revolutionary France caused concern in the Spanish court. In this climate of tension, any innovation, even in the medical field, could be viewed with suspicion. Dr. Juan de Esparza, the royal physician who had long opposed Eugenia's methods, renewed his criticisms with greater intensity, suggesting in a report to the Royal Council that her humanistic approach and implicit criticism of traditional methods might be contaminated by revolutionary spirit. When Eugenia confronted Esparza directly about his accusations, their heated discussion revealed his true motivations. Not medical concern, but personal prejudice against someone he considered unfit to teach others due to her own deformity. Eugenia's dignified response emphasized that precisely because she had lived what these children lived, she could offer them something traditional medicine could not: understanding, hope, and proof. The difference need not mean condemnation to marginalization. Recognizing the danger these accusations posed in the current political climate, Eugenia sought explicit protection from Queen Maria Luisa, requesting a royal decree establishing the program as a permanent institution under direct crown patronage, placing it beyond reach of political accusations. Though the Queen acknowledged the complexity of such a request in those dangerous times, observing her son Francisco's remarkable progress under Eugenia's care convinced her to act. A royal decree established the institution for treatment and education of children with congenital deformities, with Eugenia named as director with authority to develop her methods without interference from the royal physician. The institution flourished under Eugenia's direction, developing educational programs adapted to each child's specific needs and hiring teachers who, under her supervision, taught not only basic knowledge, but trades that would allow the children to earn their living in the future. Prince Francisco, though receiving private treatment at the palace, regularly visited the institution, mixing with other children without distinction of rank, an unusual decision for a royal family member that demonstrated the benefits of contact with other children in similar situations. When Eugenia's mother Isabel died in 1793 after a brief illness, she lost her last family connection. However, rather than succumbing to sadness, she channeled her grief into her work, with the institution becoming not only her vocation but her family. Her reputation continued growing, with requests arriving from other Spanish cities and even abroad. She maintained extensive correspondence, sharing her knowledge and experiences while beginning to write a book, synthesizing her approach, combining medical, educational, and psychological aspects. In 1794, Eugenia received a visit from French physician Pierre Duchamp, who had traveled specifically to learn about her work despite tensions between Spain and revolutionary France. Duchamp, a man with progressive ideas, was impressed not only by Eugenia's methods, but by her personally, declaring her institution an example for the world. During his 3-week stay in Madrid, Duchamp and Eugenia developed not only a professional relationship, but a friendship that transcended barriers of nationality, gender, and physical appearance. For the first time in her life, Eugenia felt someone saw her completely as an equal, without condescension or morbid curiosity. When Duchamp proposed she come to Paris, where the Academy of Medicine would be interested in her work, and she could establish a similar institution with greater freedom to develop her ideas, Eugenia was tempted. Despite her current position, she still faced resistance and prejudice in Spain, and the idea of a new beginning in a country where ideas of equality and fraternity had found political expression was attractive. However, she also understood the risks. France was in revolutionary convulsion, and though the terror had ended, the situation remained unstable. Additionally, she had commitments to the institution's children and to Prince Francisco. She ultimately declined, though she recognized she was perhaps rejecting her only opportunity to know something resembling romantic love. The realization surprised her. She had never allowed herself to consider that possibility, thinking herself a deformed woman of 33 for whom romantic love was not a written destiny. Her purpose was different and had to be sufficient. In 1795, she received news that filled her with pride. The treatise she had written with Dr. Martinez, translated into French, had been adopted as a reference text at the Paris School of Medicine, with her name appearing as co-author rather than merely in acknowledgements. That same year, the institution received an illustrious visit from painter Francisco de Goya, recently appointed chamber painter to the king. Goya, beginning to suffer the deafness that would mark his life, had been commissioned to paint a portrait of Prince Francisco, showing his progress under Eugenia's care. During the pose sessions, Goya and Eugenia developed an affinity based on their condition as outsiders. He, due to his growing deafness, she due to her deformity. Goya commented that they were fortunate, as their disadvantages had allowed them to see the world in ways others could not. This conversation inspired Goya to propose a second portrait, this time of Eugenia herself. When she questioned why he would want to paint someone neither beautiful nor noble, Goya replied that conventional beauty was overrated, and her face told a story of suffering and triumph that interested him far more than the empty perfection of so many court ladies. The portrait Goya created of Eugenia was remarkable for its honesty and dignity. It neither hid her deformity nor exaggerated it, showing her as she was, an intelligent and compassionate woman whose body, though not conforming to conventional standards, radiated an inner beauty that transcended the physical. Queen Maria Luisa, upon seeing the finished portrait, ordered it displayed in the royal palace, not as a curiosity, but as homage to the woman who had helped her son and so many other children. Thus, the image of she who was once known as the court monster now hung on the walls of the same palace where she had been exhibited as an aberration. As the 18th century drew to a close, 38-year-old Eugenia Martinez could look back with satisfaction at having transformed her suffering into a legacy of compassion and knowledge. The deformed child from Lavapiés, torn from her home to be exhibited as a monster, had become a pioneer whose work would forever change how society viewed and treated those who were different. Her story, which seemed destined to be a tragedy, had become a testament to the triumph of the human spirit over adversity, of dignity over humiliation, and of knowledge over ignorance and superstition. Eugenia never forgot her origins, nor the wounds life had inflicted, but she had learned that scars, both physical and emotional, could become sources of strength and wisdom. This was the most important lesson she transmitted to each child who arrived at her institution. That difference is not a condemnation, but an opportunity to see and live in the world in a unique and valuable way. The legacy of Eugenia Martinez, the court monster transformed into healer and teacher, would endure far beyond her time, illuminating the path toward a more human and compassionate understanding of human diversity in all its forms.